You said you're fed up with me? My voice sliced through the stillness like a blade. Claire spun around, phone still in her hand, eyes wide, like a child caught red-handed in the dark. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out at first. Her lips parted, then closed again, trembling with some excuse she hadn't decided on yet. Ethan, she finally breathed, lowering the phone to her side. You didn't hear the whole. I heard enough. I interrupted, stepping into the doorway. Her hand clutched the phone tighter now, knuckles white. I wasn't saying it like that. Then say it like it is. My voice was shaking, not with rage, but disbelief. You don't want to live with me anymore? You're fed up? Is that how you talk to people behind my back now? She blinked hard. Her face crumpled for half a second before she smoothed it over with practiced control. It was just venting. I was upset. To who? I asked. Who were you upset with me to? That's not important. Who, Claire? She stared at the floor now, lips pressed tight. That silence, it said more than she ever could have. My heart pounded in my chest, my skin hot despite the late autumn chill seeping in through the cracked window. So you weren't going to say a word to me. Just tell someone else how tired you are of your husband, like he's some burden you never signed up for. Her voice turned sharp. You're twisting it. I was overwhelmed. It's been a rough few weeks, and I said things I didn't mean. No, I said quietly. You meant every word. You just didn't mean for me to hear it. We stood frozen, like strangers in our own hallway. Her face hardened, defensive now. Ethan, you've been so checked out lately. Always working. Always distracted. I've been alone in this house even when you're standing right next to me. I let out a bitter breath. And instead of saying that to me, you whispered it into the phone to someone else. I didn't plan this. You're twisting it, she repeated, shaking her head. I'm not twisting anything, I said, voice quieter now. I'm just seeing it for what it is. She stepped toward me, reaching out like she was going to grab my hand. Please, don't let this spiral. We can talk. I didn't mean for this to. I pulled back. Her hand hung in the air for a moment, then slowly dropped. I turned and walked toward the living room. But something in me didn't sit right. The words I'd heard weren't just spur-of-the-moment venting. There was something deliberate about the way she'd said it. No hesitation. No fear. Like she wanted that message to land somewhere specific. I stood in the middle of the room, staring at our wedding photo above the fireplace. My throat tightened. We were never flashy, never perfect, but we were real. Or I thought we were. Until tonight. Now, all I could see was the way her hand trembled as she lowered her phone. The way she didn't fight to convince me I was wrong, just tried to smooth it over. And that was the part that stuck with me most. Because sometimes, it's not what someone says when they're caught. It's what they don't say. And deep down, I knew. I'd just stepped into something far bigger than I could name yet. Something that didn't start tonight. But it sure as hell started ending. I didn't sleep. Not really. Just laid there with the ceiling fan spinning slow circles overhead, eyes wide open, waiting for dawn like it owed me something. By the time the first gray light slid under the blinds, I was already dressed. Claire was in the kitchen. She didn't look up when I walked in. 2 cups of coffee sat on the counter, still steaming, untouched. That was her move. Make coffee like nothing happened, like routine could wipe out what she'd said the night before. She had a way of treating silence like it could fix things. I pulled out a chair. It scraped too loud against the tile. She stood by the sink, both hands wrapped around her mug like it was the only solid thing left in the room. Her hair was up, her sweatshirt baggy, but there was a stiffness to her shoulders, like she'd braced herself for a storm that hadn't arrived yet. I was thinking, she said finally, eyes still locked on the faucet. Maybe we should try therapy. I didn't answer at first. Just took a slow sip from my cup, more out of habit than need. The coffee was bitter. She turned then, facing me, arms still crossed over herself. I mean it, Ethan. We need help. Help with what? My voice came out flat, too calm to sound natural. With us. Her brow furrowed like she didn't understand why I wasn't jumping at the offer. We've been off for months. And what happened last night? Look, I know how it sounded. I wasn't being fair to you. I gave a slow nod. No, you weren't. Her eyes softened. That's why I want us to talk to someone. I think it'd help. Help fix what exactly? I asked. Claire hesitated, then walked slowly to the table and sat across from me. There's distance between us. You feel it. I know you do. Yeah, I said. I feel something. She looked relieved for half a second, like maybe we were on the same page. But I wasn't finished. I feel like there's a second version of you I never met, I said. The one who vents about me when she thinks I'm not listening. The one who sounds like she's already got a foot out the door. Claire didn't look away. To her credit, she held my stare. That wasn't fair to you. I was overwhelmed, and I shouldn't have said what I said. But it doesn't mean I want out. You said you didn't want to live with me. She blinked quickly. I didn't mean that literally. You sure? I asked, voice low. Silence fell again. Not the peaceful kind. This was the type that wrapped around your throat and made it hard to swallow. I still believe in us, she whispered. I wouldn't be suggesting therapy if I didn't. I leaned back in my chair, watching her face for any sign of the woman I married. The real one, not the version she put on when things got complicated. All right, I said finally. We'll go. Her eyes flicked up. Really? Yeah. But inside, it wasn't agreement. Not truly. I wasn't doing this because I thought therapy would fix whatever broke between us. I was going because something about her voice last night still didn't sit right with me. The words she used. The calm way she said them. It wasn't venting. It was confession. And I needed to know who she'd been confessing to. Claire nodded, biting her lower lip. I'll find someone. A licensed couples therapist. Downtown's fine, I added. Okay. She tried to smile. It didn't reach her eyes. We both sat there, pretending to sip coffee that had already gone cold. Every tick of the kitchen clock thudded louder than it should have. I glanced at her hands. No ring. She hadn't worn it in weeks. I hadn't noticed until now. She followed my gaze. I took it off when I was washing dishes, she murmured. Forgot to put it back. I said nothing. It didn't matter. The truth was, it had probably been off for a lot longer than that. And something told me. I wasn't the only one she'd taken it off for. The office smelled like lemon oil and soft upholstery. It sat on the fourth floor of a red brick building wedged between a dry cleaner and a forgotten law firm on Mint Street. The couch was too soft. The cushions swallowed you up like they didn't want you to get back up again. Claire sat to my left, hands folded neatly in her lap, like she was attending a job interview. Her voice was light, open, almost rehearsed. I guess I always felt responsible for my mom's moods, she told the therapist. Growing up, I learned how to smooth things over before they got messy. I'd memorize what triggered her bad days. The counselor, Dr. Hallberg, a silver-haired woman in tortoiseshell glasses, nodded, pen moving calmly across a yellow legal pad. And how do you think that shows up in your marriage now? Claire smiled slightly, tilting her head. I guess I still try to fix things too quickly. I shut down when I feel pressure. I avoid conflict. Avoid conflict. That was rich. I sat there, hands resting on my thighs, my wedding band cool against my skin. For the third week in a row, Claire was opening up, but never about us. She talked about her father's long hours, her mother's nervous habits, her tendency to feel guilty when she wanted time to herself. But nothing about the phone call I heard. Nothing about being fed up. Nothing about not wanting to live with me anymore. And when Dr. Hallberg gently asked, Claire, how do you feel about Ethan lately? She gave the same kind of answer you'd use for a coworker. I think he's been trying. He's dependable. He takes care of things. I tried to keep my face neutral, but my jaw was tight. Dependable. Like a dishwasher. Like a tax return. After the session, in the elevator, Claire looked at me with a small shrug. I thought it went well. Yeah, I muttered. We've really solved your childhood. She didn't respond. Just stared ahead, arms crossed as the floors ticked by. Week after week, it was the same. Dr. Hallberg would ask about our connection. Claire would pivot. She'd talk about stress at work, the pressure of running her online boutique, her anxiety about being childless at 34. I listened. Closely. Every time. Waiting for a crack. A slip. But she never mentioned him. I didn't know who him was yet, but I knew there was a him. There had to be. People don't just say what she said that night out of boredom. She was hiding something. The thing was, she did it so well, even I started to doubt myself. Maybe I had misheard. Maybe she really was just stressed. Maybe I was the one digging for dirt in clean soil. But every time I thought about letting it go, something would pull me back. The odd phrasing. Her tone that night. The way she had paused. Not in fear, but calculation. Claire was never sloppy. She was deliberate. And now, in this room with its warm lamps and framed degrees, she was painting a mural of vague sadness. Soft brushstrokes, nothing sharp. I sat across from her each week, nodding, listening, sipping complimentary lemon water like I was supposed to be comforted by her ability to share so freely with someone else. Meanwhile, the woman I used to know, the one who once whispered jokes into my ear while brushing her teeth, had become a kind of stranger I couldn't read anymore. One session, Dr. Hallberg finally turned to me. "And Ethan, how have you been feeling during all this?" I looked at Claire. She gave me that soft, encouraging look. The one that said be the good guy. So I gave the safest truth I had. "I'm just trying to understand what we're actually fixing." There was a long pause. Neither of them replied. And for the first time, I realized something chilling. Maybe Claire hadn't come here to fix us. Maybe she came to give herself enough cover to leave without looking like the villain. "You're saying she just won't talk about it?" Mason asked, stabbing his fork into a ribeye. "Not even once." We were tucked into a booth at Carson's Grill, our usual Thursday lunch spot. Dark wood, overpriced steaks, soft country music humming overhead. Familiar. Comfortable. I let out a breath, pushing my untouched sweet potato mash around my plate. 3 sessions. She's gone deep into her mom's anxiety, her high school counselor, even a dog that died when she was 12. But the marriage? It's like it doesn't exist. Mason leaned back, chewing thoughtfully, then wiped his mouth. "And you think there's someone else?" "I think there's something else. Someone maybe. Or maybe she's just checked out." I shook my head. "I don't know, Mace." She doesn't flinch, doesn't argue, just floats through it all. He studied me for a moment, then leaned forward. "Look, man, I'm gonna say this because I know you. You're not a quitter. And you've been with Claire what? Almost 9 years? 8.5. Exactly. You don't just throw that away. Not over a bad season. Not without swinging hard at fixing it." I looked up at him. "What if she's already gone? Then make her remember why she married you in the first place." His voice was calm but firm. "Flowers. A dinner you cook yourself. Old photos. Pull her back in." I hesitated. "Isn't that pathetic?" "No," Mason said, pointing his fork at me. "It's the opposite. It's gutsy. Especially when you're not sure if it'll work. That's love, man." For a second, I didn't respond. Just stared past him at the families chatting 2 tables over. A father was cutting a chicken tender for his kid, smiling like he didn't know what betrayal even felt like. I turned back to Mason. "All right, I'll try." That weekend, I came home early with flowers, sunflowers, her favorite. I grilled salmon. Even remembered to make her sauce with the dill she liked. She blinked at the bouquet like she didn't trust it at first, then smiled, slow and soft. "Thanks," she said quietly. "They're beautiful." I didn't expect it to change everything overnight. But something shifted. We ate dinner that night without the TV on. She laughed at something I said about the neighbor's dog. She sat on the edge of the couch instead of all the way at the corner. I kept it going, small things. A note in her purse. Picking up her favorite sourdough. Leaving the porch light on when she came home late. For a little while, it felt warmer again. Not healed, but less hollow. Maybe Mason was right. Maybe it wasn't too late. It started small. She told me she was heading to her sister's in Asheville for the weekend. Said she needed a reset, space to breathe and think. I didn't protest, just nodded and helped her carry her overnight bag to the car. But then, 2 days later, I got a text from her sister, Rachel. Nothing dramatic. Just a vacation photo. Her and her husband at a lake in Maine, bundled up in puffer jackets, smiling like everything was golden. Caption: "We finally made it. Day 1 of 0 cell service, bliss." That was the same weekend Claire was supposedly staying at her place. I stared at the photo a long time. The next night, Claire returned home. She looked tired, intentionally tired. Like she'd practiced how to wear exhaustion on her face. "Traffic was awful," she sighed, dropping her keys into the bowl near the door. I forgot how long that drive is. I stood there, watching her. "How's Rachel?" She froze for just half a second before recovering. "Good. A little stressed, but good." I just nodded. "Glad you got the time." She smiled like she believed I meant it. But something in me shifted that night, quietly and without fanfare. It was like trying to rebuild a house and realizing your hammer doesn't fit the nails. You keep swinging, but nothing's holding together. After that, the inconsistencies kept piling up. She'd say she was working late, but come home in a cardigan I hadn't seen her leave in. Or she'd forget basic details. Where she had lunch, what time she got back. And always, that softness in her voice. Like she was treading water in every sentence. I didn't say anything. I just started keeping track. Thursday evening, after another one of her vague explanations about needing fresh air and solo time, I found myself in front of a narrow building tucked behind a pawn shop on the edge of Monroe Road. The sign on the door was almost invisible, Glover Investigations. Inside, it smelled faintly of paper and old cologne. The blinds were drawn. A small desk sat at the back, where a man in a dark olive sweater looked up and gave me a nod. Ethan, I nodded. He stood and extended a firm hand. Victor Glover. Come in. Have a seat. Victor was the kind of man who didn't speak unless the sentence mattered. His desk was neat. Old leather blotter, fountain pen, one photograph of a black lab with a gray snout. I don't take divorce work, he said plainly. But I do take truth. That's what you want. I hesitated, then nodded once. Yes. He leaned back in his chair. You suspect infidelity? I suspect something. He didn't write anything. Just watch me. Who else knows you're here? No one, I said. Not even your wife. No. He was quiet for a moment, then reached for a drawer and pulled out a thin folder. You need to understand something, Mr. Langley. If I find what you're looking for, there's no going back to what you had. Not ever. No pretending. No comfort in uncertainty. You ready for that? I looked him straight in the eye. Yes. Victor nodded, like he respected the certainty. Then he slid the folder across the table. I'll need full names, schedules, work locations, car make and model, and a recent photo, preferably candid. I have all of that, I said, pulling an envelope from my coat. He accepted it, giving only a small nod. This will take time. I'll be quiet. I'll be thorough, and I won't give you half-truths. That's all I want, I said. He tapped a finger on the desk once. Then we'll begin. I stepped out into the night and stood still for a moment. Charlotte's air felt colder than it should have. The kind that sinks through your coat and gets under your skin. It wasn't guilt I felt. It was clarity. I wasn't trying to catch Claire in a lie. I was just done pretending I didn't already see the cracks. Mason showed up with a six-pack and the kind of grin that said he needed a night off more than he'd admit. We sat on my back porch, the porch light flickering over two weather-worn chairs and a table cluttered with bottle caps. So, he said, cracking open his second beer. Things any better with Claire? I stared out toward the backyard. Dark, quiet, nothing moving but the neighbor's wind chimes. I hired someone, I said quietly. He turned to look at me. Hired someone, a private investigator, to watch her. The words landed like a dropped stone. Mason didn't say anything for a moment. Then he let out a sharp breath. Man, what? I needed answers, I said. Not feelings, not vibes, just facts. Mason sat forward, bottle between his palms. And you thought spying on your wife was the best move? She's lying, Maze. I've caught her in little things. Her sister was out of state the weekend. Claire said she stayed over. She keeps forgetting where she's been. And it's not just stress, it's choreographed. Like she's acting out her own alibi. He looked at me like I was halfway off a cliff. You sure you're not just seeing patterns? I mean, hell, people get distant. They hide stress. Doesn't mean there's a whole second life going on. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Mason rubbed the back of his neck. Ethan, this kind of thing, once you pull that thread, you don't go back. If you're wrong, I'm not. His eyes held mine for a beat, then he nodded slowly. All right, you do what you have to. Just don't let it eat you alive. I finished my drink in silence. 2 days later, Claire changed everything. No more late nights. No mystery errands. No unexplained trips. Suddenly, she was home. Every day, she started spending hours reorganizing kitchen drawers, wiping down already clean counters, rearranging throw pillows like she was setting a stage. If she went out, it was a 20-minute grocery run, and she came back with nothing but almond milk and celery. And the way she moved? It wasn't relaxed. It was calculated. Nervous. She kept peeking out windows, checking her phone like she was waiting for something that hadn't happened yet. She even asked me, twice, if I was still mad about things. I told her no. I lied. Because I wasn't mad. I was watching. And something in her behavior told me she knew. Not what I'd done, but that something had shifted. That maybe, finally, she wasn't the only one keeping secrets anymore. The wind had picked up by the time I pulled into the parking lot behind a shuttered diner off Albemarle Road. I killed the engine and sat there for a second, staring through the windshield at Victor's dark sedan already waiting under the yellow light of a flickering street lamp. He never picked public spots. Always low traffic. Always quiet. I stepped out and zipped my jacket, the chill sharper than usual for early spring. Victor was leaning against the driver's side door, arms crossed, manila folder in hand. No movement, he said without preamble. No contact with anyone suspicious. No unknown vehicles. No hotel visits. No second phone. No anomalies in her bank activity. He handed me the folder. Inside were photos, mostly of Claire watering plants on the back porch, checking the mail, walking out of Harris Teeter with one bag. A week's worth of nothing. She doesn't go anywhere, I muttered, flipping through the pages. That's not normal for her. Victor watched me carefully. Routine changes after an affair are common, but this is different. It's too complete. Too clean. I looked up. Too clean. She's not hiding. She's performing. People who don't want to be caught vanish. People who know they're being watched, they stop moving. I closed the folder and stared out over the empty asphalt. She started staying home almost the minute I hired you. Victor cocked his head slightly. You told her? No, never. He waited a beat, then asked slowly, who else did you tell? The question slipped through the air like a knife. I swallowed. Just Mason. Victor didn't blink. He pushed off the car and stood up straight. Say that again. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand. Just Mason, I repeated. My business partner. My best friend. He's known Claire almost as long as I have. Victor exhaled through his nose. And you told him the night you hired me? Yeah. He didn't say anything. Just turned, opened his car door, and climbed inside. Wait, what are you thinking? I asked, stepping forward. Victor paused, door still open. I'll be in touch, he said flatly. Then he shut it. His taillights blinked red as he pulled out of the lot and disappeared into the night. I stood there, frozen, the folder of surveillance photos clutched in my hand. For the first time since this whole thing began, the bottom dropped out from under me. I hadn't seen it coming. Not once. Not even a flicker of suspicion. But the second Victor asked me that question, who else did you tell? The answer didn't sit like truth. It hit like a warning. And now, every memory I had of Mason's face, his advice, his encouragement, his insistence that I fight for her, felt like it needed to be replayed in a different light. I drove home slowly that night, the silence in the car thick enough to choke on. Claire was in bed when I got back. Lights off. No movement. I sat at the edge of the bed, watching the shape of her in the dark. Calm. Breathing steady. Like someone with nothing to fear. But I wasn't looking at her the same way anymore. Because now, I wasn't just wondering what she was hiding. I was starting to wonder who helped her hide it. Victor called me from a burner number 15 minutes after that parking lot meeting. No small talk. Just a name, an address, and a time. Come alone, he said. I did. The next day, I met him in a rental office above a closed carpet store. The windows were covered in paper. No markings on the door, no trace of life inside. It was the kind of place where secrets went to breathe. Victor sat at a table by the window, flipping through notes. I checked your guy. I didn't ask who he meant. I just sat down and folded my hands on the table. Mason doesn't leave a messy trail. Most wouldn't find anything. But you did. Victor looked up, his gaze sharper now. I found inconsistencies in billing between his personal and business credit lines. Hotel charges that don't line up with business travel. Cash withdrawals from unfamiliar parts of the city, none of it linked to Claire directly. Yet, he slid a printout toward me. And this is from a license plate reader downtown last Friday. Your wife's car. Parking garage on Seaboard. 3 blocks from where Mason's office claimed he had a client meeting. I stared at the timestamp. 1:13 p.m. Claire said she was at yoga. Victor leaned forward. She hasn't been to her studio in 2 weeks. The room shifted sideways for a second. My mouth was dry, but I said nothing. I just kept looking at the printout. He waited for me to speak. I didn't. Finally, he said, you're taking this quiet. I nodded. You haven't given me proof. You've given me probability. His mouth lifted, almost approvingly. Most people start yelling. I don't need noise, I said. I need clarity. Victor sat back in his chair. I've seen this before. Best friend and spouse, they start leaning on each other. Emotional support blurs the line. Sometimes it stays platonic. Sometimes I didn't flinch. He continued. But the sudden shift? Claire going full homebody the minute surveillance starts? That's not instinct. That's a warning. I met his eyes. So what do we do? Victor's answer came without hesitation. We bait them. I waited. You tell Mason the surveillance is done. You say it didn't turn up anything, and you're putting the whole thing to rest. Meanwhile, I keep watching, just quietly this time. If either of them makes a move, I'll see it. I sat back, heart steady but heavy. You think he'd be that stupid? Victor folded his arms. If they've been cautious this long, a false sense of security might be exactly what flushes them out. I looked out the window, through the edges of the paper taped to the glass. I didn't want to believe it. I wanted to be wrong. Desperately. But denial felt expensive now. Do it, I said. Victor nodded once. Keep your routine. Act like you're relieved. Talk softer. Smile when you tell him. Make it believable. I stood, adjusting my jacket. And if they don't take the bait? I asked. Victor raised an eyebrow. Then either they're the best actors I've ever seen, or this whole thing is a different game entirely. I left the building and walked back into the cold, early evening light. It smelled like rain was coming. The kind that starts gentle, then pours. It took 3 days. 3 days of pretending everything was fine. I brought donuts into the office, laughed at Mason's joke about the broken copier, even watched him fiddle with a spreadsheet like the numbers on it mattered more than what he was hiding behind his eyes. I kept it casual, just like Victor told me. Told him the investigation was over. Said it didn't show anything worth chasing. Mason gave a slow, relieved nod, like he hadn't realized how tightly he'd been holding his breath. He clapped me on the back and said, "Glad you're walking away, man. You needed to let it go." I smiled. "Yeah," I said. It was time. By Friday, Victor texted me a single word, "Come." I met him behind a self-storage facility on the south end, his SUV idling near the back fence. He had the footage queued up on a tablet, already waiting when I stepped into the passenger seat. No ceremony, no build-up, just the truth, pixel by pixel. There they were, Claire and Mason. Hotel parking lot. Mid-afternoon. Her hair tied up in that loose twist she used when she wanted to look effortless. Him in a pullover and jeans, carrying nothing but a key card and his phone. She touched his chest as they walked. Laughed at something. He leaned in, brushed her cheek. They kissed once, twice, slowly. Not nervous. Not rushed. They'd done it before. Victor didn't speak. He didn't have to. I watched the whole thing. Every second. No flinching. No rage. And when it ended, I sat back in the seat and let out a long breath. Then I smiled. It wasn't relief. It wasn't revenge. It was clarity. Like finally snapping the last piece of a puzzle into place after weeks of staring at a mess that refused to make sense. I left without another word. Drove home. Parked the car. Took off my shoes as always. Claire was upstairs when I came in. She didn't even hear me. Probably thought I was working late again. I sat at the dining room table, opened my laptop, and began writing. 2 letters. The first, concise and professional. Subject, termination of employment. Mason Keller. Dear Mason, effective immediately, your employment with Langley and Associates is terminated due to multiple violations of ethical standards, including breach of trust and misconduct impacting the integrity of our operations. All company property must be returned within 48 hours. Your access to internal systems has already been revoked. Further communications will proceed through legal counsel. Sincerely, Ethan Langley, Managing Partner II. Personal, but cold. Petition for divorce filed under North Carolina Family Code, on grounds of adultery and emotional abandonment. I saved both drafts. Didn't send them yet. Just stared at the screen while the ceiling fan spun overhead, slow and steady. I felt no urge to cry, no desire to scream. All I could think was how neat betrayal looks when it's framed in silence. Claire came down later, hair damp from a shower. "You okay?" she asked casually, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. "Yeah," I said. "Long day." She kissed me on the cheek and patted back upstairs. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel twisted up inside. I didn't wonder where she'd been, or what version of the truth she was preparing to sell next. Because I knew. I had the proof. And soon enough, they'd have the papers. Claire found the envelope on the kitchen table, right next to her smoothie glass. I didn't say a word, just slid it there after breakfast, then walked into the other room to let the silence do the rest. A minute passed, then another. I heard the paper tear. She said nothing at first, just the sound of rustling, then one sharp gasp like the air had punched out of her lungs. "Ethan," she called, voice thin. "What is this?" I didn't answer. She came into the room, barefoot, holding the pages like they were burning her hands. "What the hell is this?" I turned to face her, my voice calm. It's a divorce filing. Already signed and filed with the clerk. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Her whole face twisted in disbelief. Are you serious right now? After everything? After all these months of trying? You weren't trying, I said. You were covering. She blinked hard. No, you're not hearing me, Ethan. I never meant for. Her voice cracked, and she dropped into the chair across from me, clutching the papers like they could anchor her. I was confused, she whispered. It didn't mean anything. I was lost. Lost doesn't look like holding hands in a parking lot, or kissing someone while telling your husband you need space. Her head snapped up. How do you even know that? I didn't blink. Because I saw it. All of it. That's when her expression broke. Fully broke. She folded in on herself, hands covering her face. Her shoulders started shaking. A sound came out of her, something between a sob and a groan. But I didn't move. She looked up, eyes red. Please. You don't understand. Mason was there when I felt alone. When you were drifting. Mason was there, I repeated. Yeah, I noticed. She stood up fast, knocking her chair into the table. He listened. When you didn't. I didn't plan this, Ethan. I didn't go looking for it. But you let it happen, I said, voice low. You looked me in the eye and said you wanted to fix us. While you were with him. Tears streamed down her face. It didn't mean anything. Then it was cheap and cruel, I said. Great combo. She stepped toward me, reaching. We can still talk about this. Please, I stepped back. We're past talking. Her voice rose. So that's it. You're just going to throw it all away? 8 years just tossed? No, I said, grabbing my jacket. You already did. I walked out. My phone buzzed before I even reached the car. Mason, 3 missed calls. Mason, for missed calls. Mason, man, can we just talk? Please. I didn't mean for any of this. Blocked. No hesitation. Some betrayals don't deserve a reply. And some friendships end with silence loud enough to last a lifetime. It took me a week to notice the weight still clinging to my left hand. I was tying my shoes in the locker room at the gym, first workout in a month, when I caught the dull glint of gold on my finger. It had become so much a part of me. I'd forgotten it was still there. I turned it slowly, not with sadness, more like curiosity, like holding a relic from a life that didn't quite belong to me anymore. I slid it off, pocketed it without ceremony, and stepped out onto the gym floor. It was early evening, place half full. Treadmills humming, someone grunting through a deadlift set across the room. I headed to the free weights. As I racked a barbell, I noticed a woman watching me from the bench to my right. Maybe early 30s. Confident eyes. Auburn ponytail. She smiled. Nothing flashy, just genuine. You always this intense? She asked. I turned, surprised. She nodded at the bar. You haven't blinked since you picked it up. I chuckled, wiping my palms. Guess I needed to lift something that made sense. She tilted her head. Rough day. Rough year, I said, without thinking. Her smile widened. Well, if you're working on turning it around, you're doing a good job. She held out her hand. I'm Tessa. Ethan. Her grip was firm. We talked between sets. Nothing deep. Travel, favorite pizza, a shared hate for running unless something was chasing us. Afterward, we ended up grabbing smoothies at the corner place nearby. It was easy. No pressure. Just 2 people sharing the same air, for once, with no lies between them. And later, back home, I stepped inside the quiet and set my keys on the counter. No calls. No apologies. No noise. Just stillness. And for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel empty. I walked past the fireplace, that old wedding photo still there, though its meaning had gone out of it like air from a balloon. I didn't rip it down, didn't set it on fire. I just turned it face down. Then I sat on the edge of the couch, leaned back, and let the quiet settle in. I thought about how messy everything had been, how many layers you think you know until you start pulling the thread. But I didn't regret finding the truth. I didn't regret walking away. Some things break so quietly you don't hear the crack until they're already gone. And some endings aren't made of explosions. They're made of peace. I looked down at the spot where the ring used to be, just skin now, pale and unburdened. And I said it aloud, just to hear it outside my own head. And everything in the world must be experienced. And every finish is, in fact, a start. And you don't have to guess in advance. And it's not worth crying over the past. And then I smiled. Because finally, I meant it. That was the end of my story. But there's one thing I keep circling back to. Mason. He stood there, looked me in the eye, and told me to fight for my marriage, while hiding the truth behind his own. Did he do the right thing? Or did he just play the part to buy himself time? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if this story hit you somewhere deep, don't forget to like and subscribe. I've got more to tell.